The following events took place around May of 2009 when I was about 18 years old. I was a senior in high school at the time and was also on the football team. Oftentimes, our school would always host games at least a few times a month, and it would also be this major event that a lot of students attended. Because we had so many games, it wasn't a big surprise we had practice almost every day. As much as I hated football practice, I really enjoyed the sport and liked the amount of support my teammates and coach gave us. One day, I had came home from practice and found a note from my mom letting me know that she went to go get groceries and that she wouldn't be back till later. With me being practically drenched in sweat, I go upstairs to grab my towel and turn on the shower. I take really long showers, so when my parents aren't around, I go mental. I was probably in there for about a good 20 minutes or so when I hear the front door open. We have one of those smart locks which makes a loud beeping noise whenever somebody enters the house. The bathroom is directly above from where the front door is, and I could still hear it even through the thickness of the walls and the running shower. I turn off the shower and put some clothes on and go downstairs to see that the door was indeed open. Figuring it was probably my mom, I go outside to see if she needed help with the groceries, only to find out that her car was nowhere in sight. Alarms start going off in my head as the only people who knew the password were my mom and as well as our meter reader who comes once a month. Why my dad isn't with us is another story, but I then walk slowly back inside to see if there was any other signs of attempted break-in. I turned the corner into my kitchen and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. There was a man I had never seen before crouched down by our pantry. He was holding a large knife. By some stupid luck, he didn't seem to notice me as he was facing in the opposite direction. I covered my mouth with my hands and went back upstairs quietly to call the police as well as my mom. I dialed 911 and tried my very best to speak into the phone as quietly as I could even while hyperventilating. The operator had told me that I should stay hidden and not to come out no matter what. While on the phone with her, I hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and not even 10 seconds later, I hear a steady and slow knock at my bedroom door. It was at this point when I began to realize that I was crying, but it was too late because I knew he was coming for me. Suddenly, I hear my bedroom door slam open and I see the man step inside. At this point, I'm trying not to make a peep, fearing he'll hear me and kill me. What happened next is what I can only describe as a gift from God. I begin to hear sirens in the distance getting louder and louder as they came closer to my house. I then saw him leave my room and hurry down the stairs before hearing the heavy knocks at my front door and someone shouting police. After about a good minute, I run down the stairs and open the door and was greeted to 3 police officers that began to question me while searching the house. My mom also ended up coming home as quick as she could. However, the police never found the man. He had got away scot-free through our breezeway door, which also had a lock. Police still weren't sure as to how he had managed to pick the lock, and there was no other signs of break-in anywhere in the house.
Years ago, when I lived in a small mill town with my then boyfriend, a crackhead used to come regularly to my door. We lived in a small old mill house that was about $400 a month. I had just moved out of my parents' house, and $400 was a pretty good deal for being right outside of a fairly large city. However, there were some consequences that came with living in such an affordable home. There was a local crackhead that would always go door to door, asking for handouts. She was a middle-aged lady on some serious type of drugs and just wouldn't take no for an answer. My first encounter with her was not a direct one. I was in the shower when I heard my pit bull aggressively barking, and she never does this. I call out to my boyfriend, but I got no answer. I quickly wash my face and my hair and get out of the shower to figure out what the hell was going on. As I walked out to the living room, I found my dog, who was just there whimpering and staring out our glass front door, as well as my boyfriend's shotgun leaning up against the wall next to the door. I thought that was odd. I freaked out a little because my boyfriend's car wasn't there. I tried calling him, but found his phone ringing on the couch. At this point, I'm not sure if I should call the cops or just wait this out. After about 10 minutes of anxiously considering my options, my dumbass boyfriend pulls back into our driveway with a woman in his front seat. He eventually comes back in and explains that she came to the door asking for a ride to the gas station to get kerosene for the heater she had. I just didn't understand why he brought his gun to answer the door, but I wasn't going to ask any more questions. After this, she would constantly come to our door asking for different things like cigarettes, beer, and more rides to difficult places. My ex would always oblige. One night, she came to the door asking for, I believe, alcohol, but we didn't have any to give. So she then asks my boyfriend for $5, and he gave her the money and came back inside. This was honestly my breaking point. I told him that I didn't feel comfortable with her coming to the door and that we had to stop giving her things. I would normally be more than happy to help someone out, but for her to come to the door every other day was becoming too much. I told him that every time he wasn't home for it, she would continuously bang on the door for about 10 minutes and eventually yell vulgar comments about me and then just storm off. He said that he didn't want to say no and didn't know how to get rid of her. One night, my boyfriend wasn't home and I had a work friend over for dinner and drinks. It was around 10 p.m. when I got a knock at the door. It was the crackhead. She asked me for a ride and I told her I had guests over and I couldn't. She then proceeded to put her hand against my door as if to hold it open and asked me where the man was, referring to my boyfriend. I told her he wasn't home. My girlfriend walked over to make sure I was okay. The crackhead told us that she needed to go to McDonald's because she's a diabetic, and her doctor said that she needed to be on a special diet of hamburgers. My friend, who's in the medical field, told her that it doesn't seem sound. Angrily, the crackhead said they made her special hamburgers. I began getting over it and just went to shut the door, but she pushed back. "Well, can I have a beer?" she then asked. I shot her a dirty look for trying to fight back on shutting my door. I told her no, and with the help of my friend, we finally got the door shut as she screamed, "What about a cigarette?" She sat outside my house yelling until she eventually just walked away. I told my boyfriend about the incident, and we finally agreed not to answer anymore.
I was home alone one Friday night, asleep in my bed, as I had to get up early for a work meeting the next day. For some unknown reason, I woke up to the sound of my Alexa speaker going off, as I had set an alarm. This was very weird, as I had set my alarm for 8 a.m., but it instead woke me up at 5 a.m. I hit the snooze button and set my alarm for my actual time. But an hour later, Alexa woke me up again. This time, instead of the usual alarm music, Alexa said my full exact name and address, basically most of my confidential information. It was creepy as hell, and I was confused out of my mind and immediately figured that someone was hacking into it, as that was the most logical explanation. Either way, I turned it off and haven't used Alexa since.
I live in an apartment complex in a quiet neighborhood with my girlfriend and our dogs. A neighbor will get the occasional domestic disturbance call for an argument or a loud party, but never anything particularly crazy. About a year ago, I was taking my lab outside early in the morning when we were approached by a dirty-looking guy who got out of a rundown pickup truck with no license plates. My dog is 12 and has always been the sweetest towards other humans, but for some reason, she went absolutely nuts at the mere sight of this guy. Something definitely felt off, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up about the same time my dog showed her hackles. So as he got closer, he then waved to me and asked me if I knew what apartment the girl who drives the Equinox lives in, because he gave her a ride home last night. Needless to say, there were a few red flags here already. Number one, why are you pointing at her car that's in the parking lot if you took her home? And number two, even if I knew, I'm not telling you. If you took her home and she wouldn't even let you in or tell you where she lived, that tells me all I need to know. I told him I didn't know and that I was sorry I couldn't help. My dog still hadn't stopped barking at this point. Apparently, that answer wasn't good enough, as he followed me into my building and said, come on, buddy, I just need to ask her something. I reiterated that I didn't know her and I couldn't help him. Still, not good enough. He began following me up the stairs, repeating himself about the girl who drove the Equinox. At this point, it's taking everything I have to keep my dog from ripping his face off. I finally managed to pick her up and walk up the stairs. As I got on my floor and was opening the door to my apartment, he came through the door that separates us from the stairs and began asking in a more aggressive tone. Mind you, I'm taller than this guy, covered in tattoos, worked out fairly regularly at the time, and had a large dog who was snarling at him. Now, I'm far from a badass, but I'm not usually the type of person someone targets to harass. Up until this point, I was speaking to him very politely. There was clearly something off about him, and I just wanted him to go away. But messing with someone at their home is crossing the line. He kept approaching me as I was opening the door, so I finally told him, "Dude, if you come through my door, I'm gonna blow your fucking brains out." This wasn't a bluff. I keep a handgun by the door due to some run-ins in my past. That, along with my tone of voice, was apparently enough for him to get the message. As I watched him run out the door and back to his vehicle from my window, I notified my apartment manager, and they said they'd contact the police and figure out who drove a white Equinox in my building so that they could alert her as well. I have no idea what he intended to do had he gotten into my apartment, or what his intentions were with the girl he was looking for. I'm just glad my dog has a great sense of character.